All right. Well, it's been a while. For those of you that know the channel, it's been a long time, but I'm back. I'll spare you the details for this video because I want to jump straight into this episode that I did with my friend Arlen. This is a lovely human being that I met. Who is Arlen? What does Arlen do? Well, he's a writer at heart. He's also a consultant. In this episode, we talk about masculinity and a project that Arlen's been working on now for the past year or so. Don't quote me on the time frame. The project is called Creative Residency with New Writing North. I'll leave links to this in the description below. He also has a Substack, which would be worth having a look. War Room, links below. Arlen's writing has been in The Guardian, Vice, and shortlisted for Oxford Flash Fiction Prize. I'm reading this from my phone because I have no working memory for all my ADHD loves out there. Arlen's been in the North for the last 10 years, married, 2 children, likes oat lattes, vegan fish and chips. At the core of this episode, you've got 2 blokes talking about what it means to be a man. We have a lot of agreeing views and some slightly opposing. It's worth having a look. Let me know what you think. I've missed you all. I'm glad to be back. Cheerio. Enjoy. Right. Well, thank you for coming to the studio, Arlen.
Thanks for having me.
Putting on my podcast voice now.
Good.
So, just to give some context as to why we're here and what we're talking about, I think it was a Saturday morning, and our lovely children had just had their drama class at the big local, and I came downstairs, and I can't remember how the conversation came up, but it became apparent to me that you were in the midst or have been writing an article about what it means to be a man, or masculinity. Is that right?
Yeah. So in the midst of, for like 18 months of writing what started as a collection of essays, where I'd been interviewing Northeast men, or men in the Northeast, so not always from here, but kind of living here, who didn't necessarily fit the stereotype of what masculinity looked like, especially in the Northeast. So the idea was to find people who were kind of challenging that and presenting a different model of masculinity, because that's something that I think for me is really interesting, because I've never felt necessarily like I aligned with those traditional kind of...
I was going to ask, why did you do this?
So 2 reasons. One was kind of me, so feeling like I had never really chimed with those expectations and those that like style of masculinity that is the one that's sort of presented most obviously, and so that was part of it. But then the second bit was Kit, my little boy, who's just turned 6, born in the Northeast, growing up in the Northeast, and I suddenly became really aware that I didn't know what it was like to grow up as a young man in the Northeast, because I grew up in the South. I grew up in Reading, and the experience of being in like a kind of in the Thames Valley, in the orbit of London, and like all of what that meant is very different to growing up somewhere like the Northeast. And so I thought, well, okay, like what's it going to be like for him? What's his experience going to be like? And how can I make sure that I have some sense of what positive potential role models are out there? So I kind of went looking for people.
So how do you see that as different from a man growing up in the North? Like, what is the stereotype? Because, I mean, I didn't really grow up in England, but what I've picked up is that in the North, they're hard men and like minor stereotypically. And then the South, well, they often get nicknamed like Southern Fairies by the Northerners.
So Reading's predominantly it's an offshoot of kind of London's economy. So it's all sort of professional services. There's lots of big IT and tech firms. There's lots of people who travel into London, and so Reading itself is always near the top of the list of like clone towns. Like the high street and the centre of the town is like all chains and very few independent places. I always found it quite dull as a place to be, and I always joke that it's somewhere that no one ends up on purpose. They just sort of like life happens and they end up there, and that was certainly the experience my parents had. They moved for my dad's work, and I don't think they would have chosen that as a place to be otherwise. In comparison, and so there's not really a like regional identity. There's not really a like pride of place in the same way that in the Northeast there is. So in the Northeast, and certainly as someone, I've been here 10 years now, and someone who's moving up here, you immediately feel this pride and this like confidence in who you are and who and what the region is, but at the same time this sort of slight edge, because it's got that separation, I think, from most of the rest of the country. Like there's kind of Tyne and Wear, Durham, and then there's lots of nothing in either direction, and then there's a bit of Tees Valley, and then there's more nothing. Like there's not really anybody to sort of anchor against. The Northeast is what it is. But if you conjure up, and I think it's true of people here in the region and people outside of it, if you try and conjure up an image of what does a Northeast man look like,
right,
it's flat caps, it's whippets, it's miners, and shipbuilders maybe. That's a stereotype that's 40 years out of date.
Right.
Like it doesn't exist anymore. And so you even if and I don't think it's what people growing up here want to be. And I think even if you did want to be it, it's impossible to be it now, because that the structures that allowed for that, the industry that allowed for that, doesn't exist anymore. And so you've got gaping holes in what's possible.
Did you feel like from the men that you spoke to,
yeah,
did you get like a sense that they had that on their shoulders to be what the older generations were typically?
Yeah.
Like, did they feel like they had to fit a role that was kind of put onto them, to be a man, to toughen up, that kind of?
Yeah, so there was definitely some of that. And so I spoke to I spoke to about sort of 10 or 12 that were kind of handpicked, different ages, basically people who either I got introduced to or I kind of came across in one way or another, and who I thought, oh, that's interesting, they're doing something a bit different. So a couple of kind of examples of, so there's one guy, so I'll go either end of like the age spectrum. So there's one guy who I think was around 70, and he I spoke to because he was one of the founding members of a male voice choir in Morpeth. So male voice choirs you associate with like
effeminate.
Well, I mean singing definitely, like but you like the male voice choir as a like cultural touch point is really associated with mining communities and with a kind of golden age of like connection and camaraderie and kind of like this sort of this sense of kind of neighborhood and belonging. Like, oh, this was sort of like the sound of it. You get male voice choirs, you get silver bands, you get like all of that went with these places that had a factory, a mill, a mine, whatever, and everybody worked there, and it would have a union that represented it. It would have a members club in the place, a working men's club, and that it would have attached to it a choir or a band. And what was interesting is like that kind of, some of that still exists, and this choir this choir was kind of founded, I guess, in the spirit of some of that. And he was someone who had always struggled to fit in. He'd been an engineer. He'd been working on a shop floor down on Humberside. and he'd moved up here, like worked in engineering and stuff, but never really like connected with his co-workers, and had really struggled to fit in kind of in masculine environments. And then actually this choir was the first time, so he was probably in his 50s, the first time where he was like, actually I've got a group of male friends, people I'm comfortable like laughing and joking and being around and all the rest of it. And actually he said people were coming in ones, so it wasn't like there were two blokes who were coming, or there was a group who came and joined this choir. It was men who were seeking some connection who were coming to join this thing from all around, like southeast Northumberland. So quite a big kind of patch of like attracting people into Morpeth. And yeah, it was like a symptom of like loneliness rather than the symptom of community, and that was really interesting.
But just let me get it straight. So that, and what decade was this? Was this at a time when there were the miners?
So this is still going now. So it was founded about 20 years ago. This choir, and it's still got. He's still like, so he was a founding member. He's still in it now. They've kind of gone through like various sort of generations of people being part of it.
Because just not to get confused, like when there were the miners,
there were more of these.
There were more of them.
So there were lots of male voice choirs.
So why does it seem like to me that it was? It seems like the opposite of what How to Be a Man, like an old school How to Be a Man populace would have been. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so were there miners that would go to the choir?
Yeah, it was part of the. So if you think about the traditions of like sort of those communities, you would have, there'd be the pub in the village, there'd be the shop in the village, there'd be the school in the village, like, and all of these things would have the same families going to them. The pubs would often have folk music playing in the back. There'd be people who played instruments and sang, and if you're talking about 50s, like 40s, 50s, 60s, in particular, and kind of further on as well. But like that was your entertainment. That was that was how you connected. And so working men's clubs in particular, they would get touring musicians, and they'd come in and kind of like everybody would be there because it was the only thing that was happening. But it was definitely part of. So singing and music and all of that was.
And it
part
wasn't
of that
seen
community.
as any less masculine to be part of a choir.
No, and male voice choirs in particular. I mean, definitely up here. I was born in South Wales, and South Wales is like the kind of the male voice choir is the sound of South Wales. Really evocative, really emotive, and it's interesting. I've not thought about it like that, but it's not a. Yeah, it's quite an exposing thing to do. To sing in a group.
I can't help thinking it's like really like ahead of its time.
Yeah,
like because now it like with the backward views that I see with some people and what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
If you went up to them and go, "Oh, do you want to be part of a choir?" They'd be like, "Oh, it's gay," like that kind of reaction.
Yeah.
But then to hear that miners were actually part of that. Culture.
There's probably something in the confidence and stability and the like security that came with doing a job like working down the mines. Like you that's not a job that people do or did lightly, and they were well paid. They were kind of able to support a family. There was housing that came with it. There was
a whole community.
And so all of that gives you security, I think, in a way that maybe allows you to do some of that stuff without ever questioning it. Whereas now I think everything is sort of viewed through that lens of maybe insecurity and kind of not that sense of, well, I don't know quite where I sit.
Yeah.
Because if everybody's doing that thing of being involved in community, being part of doing music or kind of singing in the choir, or I mean, another example is there's the.
Give us another person.
Well, I'll give you another person. Another example of that is I went. There's the Woodhorn Museum up in southeast Northumberland, which it's a museum on the site of what was a kind of working mine for 70, 80 years. Buildings are still there. And they've got a collection there of paintings done by a group called the Pitman Painters. So it was miners who, as part of their cultural and sort of philosophical exploration of the world, got together and learned how to paint.
Fuck.
And
I never would have expected that.
And it's
for some reason.
And they're gorgeous, and they painted their lives. So there's paintings of the like them at the seam, like and like if you imagine like the famous like Guernica painting where it's like battle and it's dark and it's sort of really kind of ferocious, and it felt the same as these dark images of like kind of twisted bodies and like you've got the beams and the struts holding up the tunnels and stuff, and it's the kind of thing that you could only ever paint if you'd been there and you knew what it was like. But if you were just an artist, you wouldn't have had that direct connection. It needed to be a miner that painted that. And so it was really interesting, like going around it. And so that, and they did kind of like life in the towns and the villages and things as well, what kind of it was like. But those ones in particular, where it was kind of pictures of what it was like down there, really fascinating. But there was a whole kind of, and I'm not an expert like in the kind of the mining history of miners and things, but like you kind of absorb it when you start to sort of explore some of this. But there was a culture of like intellectual curiosity that went with these communities, and obviously like political activism and internationalism, globalism of like being part of this sort of global working class, and how you kind of defend and kind of protect it. And so I think it's so all of those things that you maybe wouldn't traditionally associate with a miner or the Northeast division of Masculinity, actually they're all under there. They're all under there, but maybe under celebrated.
My like preconception of what a miner would have been like would be the very stereotypical like man job, toxic masculinity environment. Yeah. And not at all would I have thought that they'd be doing choir music and painting. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like they had a much broader spectrum of what it means to be a man.
I think so.
Rather than now.
I think so, and I think yeah, like I say, I think lots of it comes back to like feeling stable and secure in who you are.
So what happened, do you think? And I'm darting off a little bit, but like the question that keeps coming into my head is what happened? Yeah. Because now, like, you fast track 40, 50 years. Is it that many years? Yeah. Then you've got like the likes of Andrew Tate on social media, and you've got younger generations that seem to be craving leadership, I guess, or like someone to look up to. Yeah. And so much of what I see is, I don't know if it's fair to say like misinformation, but it seems like toxic information. And like this uprising of incel, is it incel? This incel culture. And on the surface, when I heard about incels, I kind of flippantly thought like, oh, but you know, it's not a real issue. And then like digging deeper, it's like there are some men that are committed to not pursuing women because they truly believe that women won't be interested in them because they're just after the 1%. And I was like, how did we get here? And like, do you think that's just a social media thing?
So social media, I think, allows the spread of those messages, and there are always people who are going to be looking to exploit the lost and the vulnerable. I think as an overall point, I think so if you think back those 40, 50 years, the thing that's changed is the relationship that we have with work, the relationship that we have with the places that we live. Industry has changed. So the idea that you would almost inevitably be able to find work and that you would have work for life is completely gone. So there's a precariousness to life that I don't want to say it didn't exist then, but it's a different type of precariousness now. And I think
What do you mean by that?
there's
There's less meaning behind the work that men find.
there's a detachment, I think, from place, and so it's that thing of if you grew up in the Northeast in the 70s or 80s, the types of work that existed would be it would be heavy industry, it would be shipyards, mines, it would be the tail end of those things because they were already starting to disappear, but and the kind of like the kind of manufacturing base around those as well, but you would be able to find something, and usually it would be something that your dad or your uncle had done, or your brother was working there, or whatever. There'd be some link and some connection, and there was always work, or perception that there was always work. And as I say, like these things were starting to fade away by that point already. But it was something local. It was something that paid you enough that you'd be able to afford to live. Everyone kind of knew what it was and what was going on with it, and you were the social contract between you and society and the rest of the population was kind of there, because it was, if you do what you need to do, you get the qualifications you need, you find the work, you work hard, you earn the money, you'll be able to afford the house. So like all these things would be okay. I think lots of that has kind of crumbled, and so people begin to feel like the vision they were sold of the life they could have, they're not ever reaching. So the idea that you come out of school, you go to university, you get a degree, then you'll earn enough money, you better buy a house, like you get married, you have kids, you do all of that. We have this vision of a kind of conveyor belt where you kind of go down it and you do all of those things in order, and you like get the kind of prize at the end of like the happy life. And actually that's not how it works. It's not how it's ever worked, but that's what people look for. And then I think when that doesn't work, people then start looking for enemies, and they start looking for people to blame. And it's a lot easier to blame other people than it is to blame yourself, or to look at structural issues in society. You want to look for who the people are that are actually the ones who are doing it to you. And so that and then what happens is you get the likes of the Andrew Tates or whoever, who place themselves in there saying the problem isn't you, the problem is them. Those people who do that are always on the take. They're always on, like, looking out. They're trying to make some money. They're trying to like build a following. They're trying to, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. There's always something nefarious to someone who comes in with an easy solution like that. But they are preying on people who are lost. And I think part of that like detachment is down to role models. It's down to not having this, not being able to look and see something that feels like the life that you want, or something that seems like it's a viable route to what you want to do. Because traditionally, though, if you again like those role, if you were looking around you for what masculinity looked like, what kind of being a man looked like, those traditional kind of conceptions of it fit within society 40, 50 years ago, because it was all about, you be really stoic, don't talk about your feelings, go to work, earn the money, be the kind of be a stern father maybe, but you kind of, you do those things, and those are the things that define being a man. But then what happens if you can't find work that is stable and secure? So if you work in the gig economy and you're doing shifts like driving an Uber, or like delivering food or whatever, and you're scrapping to make ends meet, and you don't know, like, week on week, like what what you're going to be able to afford. Like, are you going to be, and that detachment, that then makes it really difficult. So that you've lost that big element of what it means to be a man, and so you're kind of fighting it. Sort of, yeah. What does that look like? What does the world look like to me? And then it comes to the social side as well. Like, what if I want to be a more present father? What if I want to have a more even distribution?
Okay, so this leads on to what I was going to ask. So, you know, you have a generation of men that feel like underachieved to what their expectation of their lives were going to be, and therefore they don't feel like they're living up to this ideal of what it is to be a man. Yeah. So is that a case of the values need to shift, or is that objectively what a real man should look like? Because I think about different men have different perceptions of what it means to be a man, but maybe it's like we're asking the wrong question sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's like, what's the value to you as a person? Mm-hmm. And I think with awareness, the past 10 years, 15 years, obviously, generally, we've become more accepting of people on the gender spectrum, the sexuality spectrum, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. But this idea of what it means to be a man seems like an impossible question to answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, two-part question. So like growing up, what struggle did you have with not fulfilling that man quota? Uh-huh. And now looking back, well, no, not even now looking at it, what do you feel like it means to be a man to you? And that you would like to, pass on?
Yeah. So I don't feel like... So I'm about to turn 38. I don't feel like I've changed much since I was about 14. I feel like I'm still fundamentally like that same person, really. And I think so there's a kind of like combative aggressiveness that comes with like traditional masculinity that I never liked. I never really was able to connect with. I, as a father and as a partner, have always wanted to be as equal in distributing all of the load of everything as much as possible. And like, I think you fight a little bit against like your social programming and some of that, and like you kind of your awareness of kind of where that burden might sit, but you try and challenge it, and you try and be more present as much as possible. I think there's an emotional openness that I strive for that isn't inherent in kind of masculinity. I think there's a kind of sense of, it's that like, you're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to like not show when things upset you or hurt you. Like, you're supposed to sort of like push that down. There's a sort of performative aspect to masculinity that you kind of, certainly as a teenager, you kind of slip into because you're trying to like fit into whatever everyone else is doing. And I always found that really difficult, really draining, really kind of really challenging. And it took me a while to accept that I wasn't ever going to be able to live that. I wasn't going to be that person. And so I need to just try and accept who I am. And I think
that's some growth.
I know. Well, yeah, exactly. And I don't think it's anything like revelatory about that. I think it's just as you get older, you get a bit more of that, like,
if you're lucky, right?
Yeah, you get a bit more of that like sense of self. And I can give you another example from the people I spoke to. I spoke to this lad who was when I spoke to him, he just turned 18. He only worked for the Newcastle United Foundation, running sessions for kids, like doing football, doing like sport. And he had been involved in drugs and knife crime, kicked out of 8 different schools. He had become a father at 16. He had a little girl. He had never, I think, had a kind of positive male role model in his life until he went to work. And then he was working with group of men at the foundation, women as well, but there were a group of men like who he'd sort of like connected with in particular, I think. They were kind of coaches and like members of the team there and stuff, and they were all like very like purpose driven people because they work for like this charitable foundation. And he found, I think, a kind of point of connection with them and a kind of warmth and a kind of validation that he was worthwhile as a person there that he'd never really found elsewhere. And so it was really interesting talking to him about his aspirations for who he was going to become. And a lot of them were around his daughter. A lot of them were around wanting to be a good father, wanting to be a good partner to his partner and to the mother of his child, and wanting to. So some of it was like you go out, you earn a living. He was really proud of being able to do that. Go out, earn a living, do good work, and what was interesting as well was, so he'd like discovered these role models. He was earning a living and he was feeling really good about the work he was doing and the type of work it was, but he was also able to connect with some of the other men in his life. So he had some older brothers who he'd not really got on very well with for a number of years, and he was starting to kind of reconnect with. I think his grandfather as well was someone who had been a presence in his life, but not always necessarily a depth of connection. But then he now goes to work with the Newcastle United badge on his chest, and they all know what that means. And that was a really important symbol of connection to place and to a source of pride and a source of civic identity. That the fact that he did that, it was really easy for them to understand, oh, that's what it is that he does. Works for the football club, does sessions with kids, ain't that great? He's earning a living, fantastic. If he was doing any other job, I think he would have struggled to maybe explain it or like have that ease of connection. But there was something to that symbol and that like structure that allowed him to get past some of that that cynicism. I think it must be very difficult for people of that generation. So he's sort of 20 years younger than I am. Like people of that generation to look out into the world and kind of know what it is that they want to do and feel confident enough to start doing it without having that support around you. So he found it in work, and the people that he was working with who believed in him and were able to sort of bring him through, and they took him from doing kind of like being part of their sessions and being part of their sessions and being kind of a volunteer through to then being employed part-time to then being up to full-time. And so they brought him through this like pipeline because they believed in him and thought that he could do a really good job. But his validation of who he was and what he was about was external at that point. So he's 18 years old. It was external validation. As you get older, and so the guy in the male voice choir, all of his points of validation, when I was asking him, well, what do you feel about yourself and like your sense of masculinity, all his points of validation were internal.
Interesting.
So he was always talking about...
So there was a shift somewhere.
Yeah, so he's always talking about, oh, well, I do this, and like, it was very like self-aware, like talking about his own confidence and his own like sort of I sing because of this, I like it because of that, I like it allows me to do this and that. It was all very internal. Whereas, yeah, talking to this young lad, it was all, this person says this about me, this person says
the
this about me.
value of what it meant to them, of their masculinity, it shifted from, and it makes sense, right? When you're younger, it's what everyone else thinks. And then that masculinity becomes more about what you think about yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And both of those are really, like, so it's all about validation, and both of those are really valid.
Do you think there's a way that you could raise a boy or a girl to have that self-validation from the get-go? Or is that something you have to, like, unpack, unfuck, and then rebuild later on in life? Do you know what I mean?
See, I think the challenge, and this is sort of, and so this is why this is a thing that's taken me like 18 months and I'm still not finished with it yet. I think the arc of it is that you need that external stuff because you're still growing as a person. You're still developing. Your brain is developing. You're like, the world is changing around you. You're finding out who you are and what you're about. And like, you're going to make mistakes. Like, you're going to do things that aren't like, you're going to go down one path and you're going to change and go down another. So that external support and validation is necessary. It's what form that takes. And how can we have that in a positive way? So the challenge is to put the structures in place, both like formally, like let's have like proper state support for like community focused initiatives and like training and jobs and all of that stuff, like allow people to explore this stuff. Put that in place, but then also us as individuals have a sense that we're role models too. We're the people who are providing external validation, particularly for those who are in our lives, to get to a point where they then can stand on their own 2 feet and start doing it for other people. So that's something I'm really conscious of with Kit is how can I model what I think a man ought to look like and ought to be like, and how can I create space for him to be whatever man he wants to be in a positive way, protect him from the worst of like society's ills and the kind of nefarious actors who might be out there, and point him in the right direction to eventually get that sense of self and that internal validation of who he is.
Yeah.
And obviously, soon you get it, brilliant. If you're like, it took me well into my 30s. If you're confident in your 20s, brilliant.
I think a big change from that I can see from how I'm raising Bella, my daughter, to the way that I was raised is that now I'm very, and obviously like every relationship is unique, but I'm very like open and transparent to accept my mistakes, my flaws, and my when I've done good.
Yeah.
And so like from a very young age with Bella, like if I had done something which I deemed like not great, I would apologize even when she was 2. I remember like, you know, a 2-year-old is challenging.
Yeah.
And I remember I once snapped at her mum. Bella was crying, everyone was stressed, and I snapped at Briggy. And then I stormed out and I was like, okay, you need to repair.
Yeah.
And I gave it 5 minutes and then came back and I apologized to Bella, a 2-year-old, and her mother for snapping.
Yeah.
And I tried to continue role modeling what it looks like to be an open, transparent individual.
Yeah.
And then I remember when she must have been about 4 years old and she hit me and then she had a cry and then she came back to me afterwards and she apologized for hitting me. And that's just one example. Like there's lots of nuance to it and every child is different, right? And has their own individual struggles as well as the adults. But I think the communication part is so important with the child and not to underestimate what they can understand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And what they'll inevitably pick up.
That's role modeling, right? Like
they're so perceptive.
Apologizing, like I apologize to Briggy when I feel like I've hurt her feelings and it wasn't just like
when you're justified.
When I've justified her, that's great. But do you know what I mean? And I try and look at it like that. Just to go back to the young guy that you were talking to, and you were talking about how he felt like he found his place with other people. and the kind of the contrast of self-validation and validation from others. I feel like at 40 years old, I've unpacked a lot of my own stuff, and I have like a inner confidence that I might not have had when I was younger. But in public spaces, and I always think of the big local, which is like for anyone who's listening, watching, is like it's a hub of lots of parents, and it's generally very loud, and there's a lot going on. And for a neurodivergent, it's a lot, right? But going
very
there,
inclusive and welcoming space, like
amazing, amazing. Like it's a safe place to go.
Yeah.
Even though like it's.
Yeah,
It's
if you wanted to like sit under the table for 10 minutes, like no.
Yeah,
like,
well, and people do, right?
yeah.
But for me personally, going into those environments, especially a couple of years ago when I didn't know anyone, meeting other men, and maybe this is a me thing, maybe you can tell me like how you felt about it. I always felt there was like a, not a ritual, but like a little bit of, I was always more nervous meeting other men than other women. Like I felt more accepted by other women.
Yeah.
And with other men, it was always like, oh God, how is this going to go?
Yeah.
Is this going to be performative?
Yeah.
Are we going to, like, is there going to be like an ego battle?
Yeah.
And then I question, like, why does it have to be like that with every new bloke that I meet? It's like, I'm internally vetting them, like, is he going to be a dick? And not because he's a dick, but because he's playing up to this masculine role. And then some people are just like, oh, he's just being himself. Like, love that. Like I want, like at 40 years old, is that then a me thing that I like need to check, or is that actually happening?
So my perception of like the if you're watching like Big Local, like it's a David Attenborough documentary, like you are one of like the primary connectors. So I see you going around the room like on a Saturday morning, and you'll say hello.
Oh, I love that. My ego's loving this. Keep it going on.
But no, you'll say hello to everybody. Like I'm terrible. I'll go and sit at a table by myself because I need like to check out. But you will go and say hello to everybody, and you check in with people, and I think that's from a place of genuine affection and curiosity. Like you want to know how people are, and you want to like find out how their week has been or whatever. But I feel like you were the person, and certainly with me, like you were the person who was doing the legwork to like make the connection initially, which is like, it's a brilliant thing, and it's really like
Thank you.
Really sort of, it's a really lovely thing. And I think again, men don't do that. You don't like put yourself out there. I've got a mate of mine, Jamie, who's a wonderful man who is he's like my most consistent like checker inner. He will like text me to see how I'm doing, and like he'll be like, "Hey man, you're a good dad," and like I won't have said anything, but he'll just be like reminding me, which is like
that's a beautiful thing.
I love and appreciate it. But when I first, so Jamie's a fascinating character, and he won't mind me talking about him a little bit. I won't talk forever, but a little bit. He's been in recovery from he had a really serious accident. He basically fell off Snowdon. Broke his back in 3 places, and he's over the last few years been in kind of a recovery for that, and he's been the most inspiring person, and he I think that like triggered something in him of like, I need to stop fucking around, like I can't, like if I want to like hang out with someone, I'm just going to tell them. If I feel something about someone, I'm just going to tell them.
Yeah.
And so he is a very outwardly communicative and kind of affectionate man. And I knew him a little bit before he had his accident, but not a lot. And then he reached out to me and just said, I think we'd really get on. Let's go for a drink.
Nice.
But he literally said, I don't know how men in their 30s do this. Like, do you want to go out? And so it was like, okay, yeah, let's go. And so we kind of like went and hung out and had a drink. But it was like, how do you make friends as a man in his 30s? And because most men, your friends are like blokes that you would just like bash together in proximity with. It's like people you went to school with, it's people you know from university, people you worked with. You don't just make a random friend.
No.
And then I think women do so much more of the emotional labor around kids as well. So a lot of the connections that men end up with as they get older are because their partners have made friends with another parent.
Yeah.
And then the men hang out at the barbecue or whatever. Like that's the point of connection. So actually going and doing that sort of independently is it feels like quite a significant thing, and it's been a hurdle that I've been like trying to clear in the last few years as well, being more proactive in like doing that and saying to people, let's go for a drink, or let's go for a coffee, or let's go for a walk, or whatever it is, like let's hang out, and also be more open to it when other people reach out, because it's such a difficult thing.
And why is that important to you? Because do you? I mean, if you're a bit like me, like I could easily be alone for weeks, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
But I guess there's like there's a turning point when it's like, oh, this is now not healthy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is it. Is that so? I'm quite a kind of insular, independent person most of the time, but there's a couple of things that sort of triggered it. One was a real kind of realization, I guess, and a kind of consciousness that don't come from the Northeast, don't have family up here, and so you then become really dependent on, in Kate, in my case, really dependent on your partner to be all things. And that's that's not healthy, and like you
or fair. Right?
Or fair. No, it's not healthy.
On either of you.
No, exactly, because there are like we've got a really like deep, meaningful bond, and there are like love each other very much, and there are lots of things that we have in common, but there are also other parts of ourselves that you kind of park a little bit for that relationship, but actually. No, like you want to go out and do other things, and you need other people in your life, and you need those other connections in your life. And I think I was really certainly like 3-4 years ago, kind of thinking, I've got like a handful of really good friends, and I might see them every so often, but like actually, that like those points of social connection, I don't have that many, and so like let's make an effort to like get some more, because even though I would be perfectly happy sitting at home by myself a lot of the time, you do need that like that kind of humanity in your life.
I mean, we're in a similar position where, you know, we came up to the Northeast we knew very few people, and we have no family, and then raising a baby can be quite isolating in itself, right? And I think it was when we came into 2024, me and Briggy were like, okay, this is the year that we make friends. We'd lived in the area for about 2.5 years, and we just didn't have any friends. And we're like, we're gonna bring this into existence. Like, we have to intentionally try. And it's, I think when you bring those things into intention, you're open to it anyway, and then they kind of present themselves. And the funny thing is with me and Briggy especially, it's very high up in her list of like values is to have friends, but just like a handful. She doesn't need a lot.
No,
like that like fills that bucket, if you like. But I don't know if like. Women seem to be so much more open with each other from the get-go, and then with men there's, although like from all the men that I've met, so like with you I felt it was very comfortable, very quick. I think it's just because I got like an authentic thing. There was no bullshit.
No.
And that bullshit.
I'm too tired for that.
Yeah. but that bullshit that I talk about a few years ago, it would have intimidated me. Now it just frustrates me. It's like, okay, so we have to do this dance before I can talk about anything. Like, I just find it, I find it bizarre. And I wonder if that sometimes gets confused with younger people as like, that's what it means to be masculine, is to have all this pretense.
It's interesting what you were saying earlier about kind of more comfortable like around and kind of speaking to women as well, because I think that's something that I really recognize as well in myself, is that actually I've always preferred those environments. Because it's such a different feeling being like in the minority in a kind of room where the kind of relational experience is led by women, where you're sort of the topics of conversation and the like just the kind of general like environment, and so I would, yeah, I mean, there's very few like male heavy environments in my life, like it, and like I'm a football fan. I go to football games. That's probably the only one. I don't go to that many anymore because like small kids, it's difficult. But that's probably the only like male dominated environment I go to, and I feel a little out of place there too, even though that's been part of my life since I was a kid, going to games. It's still quite. It feels a bit different, and so yeah, there's something to that of like but also being like, so I took shared parental leave when Kit was born, and I had 3 months off with him, and Kate had like established the kind of routine where there were classes that she was going to, and there were kind of things that were kind of the touch points of the week, and so I basically just stepped in and like did those. She went back to work. I was off for 3 months, and I went in and did them, and that meant almost all of those situations being the only man in the room. So I'd go in, there'd be like 20 mums with babies, there'd be the teacher doing the class. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to, like, whatever you're supposed to be doing, I'm going to do. I'm not going to be, like, weird about this. So I'm going to get down on the floor, I'm going to sing the nursery rhymes, I'm going to do all of this stuff. And
I would have refused.
Well, see, this is, well, and that's your natural inclination. But and I think and you would occasionally get like a partner, like a dad come along, and he'd like everyone would be on their knees like in a circle, and then the dad would be like sat on a chair behind. It's like, just get in there. And it was interesting to not be a visitor, not be a tourist, but to actually be part of those groups for that period of time. But I had to, like, particularly those first few weeks, I had to like force myself into it until I knew the rhythms and routines and all the words to all the nursery rhymes. Like,
I think it's true in me saying like groups of women are very good at creating a safe environment for each other, or they're definitely more in tune with it. Whereas you get a group of men and it can quickly escalate into something that's very bravado based.
Yeah.
And it's what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to impress the other, and like a lot of peacocking going on. It very quickly can go that way.
Yeah.
Having said that, like I work with a couple of guys that are in their early 20s and the other guys in his late 20s, and they're not like that at all.
No.
There's like no male, stereotypically like male bravado bullshit going on.
Yeah.
They're like quite in tune with, everyone just be nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I
weird.
think some of that is breaking down.
And it seems like some of the younger generations, they're so more like ahead than I was, in terms of like fairness and like neutrality. But then at the same time, they're struggling a lot harder than I ever was.
Yeah.
And I mean, I struggled.
Yeah.
But like there seems to be like a huge increase in like anxiety and depression in like young men.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It seems like they're more aware of it, but then unable to really like fit in with what it is that they want to be.
It's interesting because it's I don't know, and like maybe younger men are better at this, but like I might have a conversation about how I'm feeling with you or with a couple of other people, but with most of my male friends, if I went to the pub with them, we'd be talking about like music, or we'd be talking about like our favourite 90s footballers or something like that. Like
safe topics.
It would be surface level, yeah. And then I'd get back and Kate would be like, how's so and so's wife? Like, yeah, like when's the baby due? And I'd be like, oh, we did not talk about that. Like, I don't know anything. Like, yeah, we like didn't. None of that came up at all. And or she'd be like, oh, they've just moved house. Like, how they? Don't know. Didn't ask. Like, because you don't talk. You don't talk about anything of substance. And I'm like that with my brother. Like, I will every so often be like,
But why is that?
I need
Why
to
is
like
that?
ask a proper question. But most of the time,
Yeah,
we're just
yeah.
like sending each other like basketball clips. It's like it's sort of, and so I know he's alive because he's sending me stuff and like reacting to things, but I don't know anything that's going on with him a lot of the time. I just sort of trust that if there was a problem, he'd tell me.
You know,
And I think he probably would, but like
I think so too. Like,
yeah.
I think I can't think off the top of my head. Well, maybe one good friend, but the majority of men where if I start talking about how I'm feeling, they respond positively. Like it almost gives them permission to kind of open up that door.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I can't think off the top of my head anyway because my brain's a bit zapped, but I think men want to be able to talk about all of that side of stuff.
Do you know this theory that that like our like stiff upper lip like concept of like particularly British masculinity is basically because there was an entire generation of men who had PTSD from being in the war.
Yeah.
Like, so there's this sense that you don't talk about how you're feeling, but it's like yeah, they're all like dealing with trauma.
You know, when you talk about like generational trauma, so much of it goes back just not even 100 years. Like it's from the Second World War, from the First World War.
Yeah.
Like we're still feeling the ripples of that.
Yeah.
You know, and with each generation, we're just trying to do a little bit better than the previous.
So
So that was that's a literal thing where you don't talk about your feelings because it would trigger the PTSD of a war veteran.
yeah, well, yeah, like yeah. So they wouldn't talk about anything.
They couldn't.
So they'd come back and they'd be like, no, let's like.
Yeah, they can't. You can't open that door because it's too traumatic.
And then we were like, okay, well, that's what it's
That's
like.
what we'll do
That's
then.
what you're supposed to be like. Which
Which ironically then creates more trauma, right?
well, yeah, exactly, because you're then,
New trauma.
yeah. Well, you're just carrying that like that through, and then creating your own. But it's interesting. So like, my dad. So he passed away about 3 years ago. Just gone 3 years ago, and we always like there was never any question that he like loved and cared for us, would be there for us, do everything for us. Not a very communicative or emotional person, but always felt very safe, always felt very loved, always like had a like lovely upbringing, and always knew I could go to him with any problem. He was completely estranged from his father from kind of being very young, was raised by my grandmother, great grandmother, and great aunt. So there were 3 women in his life who kind of raised him. But he was a very independent person and very kind of separate from them. But I didn't know very much about my grandfather until through lockdown I started trying to research him and find out, because my dad didn't really know either, because they'd sort of, so they'd been kind of apart. Like his parents had separated when he was like primary school age, and I think they basically been, it was the 50s and it'd been very like very sort of divisive, and so there'd not ever been a reconciliation there. It turned out he was a racing driver, so he was like the most masculine, toxic masculinity of like a racing driver in the 60s and 70s, and he kind of lived that playboy lifestyle, spent all his money and like raced fast cars and wasn't even particularly good at it, but like like
Yeah, he had the persona of man.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
And so what was interesting was that like, so my dad then, so his dad had been absent, so he was very present, and his dad had done nothing for him, so he wanted to do everything for us. And so there was always, and so his was like a direct reflection and response to his lack of father figure in his life, was to be as present to one, but without necessarily the tools to like actually sort of, I mean, he was a great father, but like to not the tools to necessarily talk about it, and it was only kind of as he got ill and then as he passed away, and then kind of talking about talking about it with my mum and like with my brother and like sort of processing all of that, you then start to go, well, actually, he was dealing with trauma
Yeah.
of his own. He was a deeply anxious man that I wouldn't have ever really thought about, because I don't suppose you do when you're a kid, but I hadn't really thought about it even as an adult, that like, this was an anxious person. And it then starts to make sense. Well, okay, so that he was how he was because of his father. I am how I am because of him. How am I going to be to Kit and then to Birdie, our little girl? Like, how am I going to be, and how can I be a little better?
Yeah,
a little better.
I mean, it sounds like, given the circumstance your dad grew up in,
Yeah.
he did all right, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he did what he could with what he was given.
Yeah. He did incredibly. Like he
Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know. I know with my dad, like when he was home, he was very present, but he worked on the oil rigs. And so it was one of those where throughout my whole, I mean, he passed away when I was 15, but up until then, he'd be away for 2 weeks and then he'd be back for the weekend. He'd be gone for a month, back for a week. And so at some point growing up, I can look back and I know I detached from him emotionally.
Well, you can't rely on it.
You can't rely on the father figure to be there, and he wasn't, right? So, and when I became a teenager, we started like rubbing each other the wrong way. I could see where it was going. Right, it was going to get fucking hostile. From me, because it was like, who are you to step in now when you've never been there? And so
but his conception of it might have been that, well, I'm trying to provide.
He's providing, because he came from a very poor background, and I don't know what his relationship was like with his dad, but I'm guessing his dad was. I'm guessing the poverty was difficult, right? And so he provided well financially for us and for me, but like on an emotional level, there was huge gaps. And so then when I had Bella, nearly 6 years ago, I knew that I wanted to be as present in her life as possible. No matter what. Even at the sacrifice of working all the time and making money. Like, money became secondary.
But she's going to get to 15 and be like, oh, my dad never leaves me alone.
Yeah, maybe.
So maybe. Like, it's such a funny thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Or she'll be like, God, we're fucking broke, pops. Go get
on.
a job. Get a real job.
Get on those rigs.
I think it's finding the balance, right? It's not doing the opposite of what your parents did, but at least like checking in with yourself. Like, what is it that I needed as a child? And then try and cater for the child that you have, even though the child that you have growing up in a different time, you know, the core values are the same, what a child needs, right? They need present parents that unconditionally love them. I mean, that's the main goal. But it's such a difficult thing to do.
There's no, I mean, I was about to say there's no like manual for parenting, but there's hundreds, and
it's big business,
and they're all rubbish. But there's no right or wrong answer to any of this, because you're always it's constantly evolving for each individual like child and each individual like parent, and I think what you're saying, like check in, like that's the best you can do, isn't it? It's like try and be kind of conscious of, and particularly like, and it's interesting again what we were saying, like about trying to like go, oh, I need to apologize for that, I need to like correct that. That's
repair. The repair is so important. That
is like, and that's a degree of like self-awareness that isn't always present in people, and I think that's sort of a really healthy thing to admit. Oh yeah, I didn't do as well as I could have done there. Like, I need to do better next time. Like strive for like that personal kind of growth as a just as like a well-rounded functioning human being in a world that's like really quite shit a lot of the time, and like there's a lot of difficult things going on, and like you have to be constantly evolving. You have to be constantly trying to changing your footing.
There's a lot to navigate. There's a lot to navigate. I think open communication, like trying to stay true to yourself, is really important. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up in a bit, but so what would you say from all the conversations that you've had? to younger generations, right? It's like one of those classics. What would you tell the future generations what it means to be a man, if that's even the right like statement? Do we even need to know what it is to be a man, or do we just don't be a dick?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think we're in a real like transition period, and I think that's why it feels so awkward for people, because you're like,
I love that, by the way. I lean into the awkward. Let's do awkward.
because you kind of alluded to it earlier with talking about the couple of guys in their 20s, and how their kind of outlook and their like sense of kind of fairness and inclusion is different. And I think that that already is symbolizing, I think, that shift in like that. So we're kind of aging through a period where we're going from maybe those traditional concepts of what masculinity looks like and what a man might be, into something different. And I think it's a softer, more open, more kind of transparent type of masculinity, where there's, I mean, yeah, you hope that the end point is that you redress some of the imbalances that have been there. So the gender equality question, the LGBTQ question, the neurodiversity question, and you hope that you get to a point where we're just a more inclusive, welcoming society as a whole. But there's so much backlash and so many like painful twists and turns in that to go. But I hope that's where we're going. But in the meantime, you've got people who were born and raised in different points along that route, and they are all trying to either, well, they're all trying to like keep their heads above water or their feet on the ground or whatever. Like they're trying to survive. And I think the thing that we need to avoid is trying to like blame each other whilst you're feeling really awkward and kind of uncomfortable about all of that. And so I often think that like the period that I grew up in, the media that I was kind of exposed to, it was like proper lads mags culture. It was, and it was like, looking back on it, vile, but it was mainstream. It was the, like, for women, it was the size zero kind of era. It was just a horrible, like, really judgmental, really kind of hyper masculine, hyper objectification of people era of the late 90s through to the early 2000s. And we look back on it now, and it seems completely alien to where our like values and our principles are now.
But it's on page 3.
Well, yeah.
And
but we were talking that maybe we're 20 years removed, just about, from some of the worst of that. But it sort of runs in cycles, but yeah, like your kind of points of reference are changing. But you have to like accept that's like deep in your psyche, and you need to acknowledge it and let it go. And the next generation, so the people that were born then and grew up slightly later, weren't exposed to it in the same way. They were exposed to something different. I don't know, like if you've grown up in the social media era, then your points of reference could be
comes with a whole other bunch of challenges.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If you were born before that, a whole bunch of other different ones again. And you were, I mean, you think like Section 28 and not being able to talk about homosexuality in schools. That was 2003, 2005, something like that was repealed, but it was from back in the 80s, and then you think about the AIDS crisis and the way that we talked about that in the 80s and the 90s. Like homosexuality was a mental health disorder until 1990.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
It's absolutely insane, and so all of these things informed people's points of reference, and we're aging out of them into something different. And so I think we can have a viewpoint of where we want to end up, which is hopefully somewhere more open, softer, more inclusive. But we're going to have to fight our way through these waves of generational response to these things to get there. And it's going to mean people standing their ground, displaying who they are, talking about what they are, talking about what they believe. And that's, again, not always a comfortable thing for men to do, particularly when it's like standing up and challenging some of those things. And I'm not the best at it. I'm trying to get better. Stand up, kind of stand up and say, this is what I believe, and I believe in
I think the
the
conversation,
rights of everybody, and like
having
all
the
of that
conversations, even if it's just one-on-one, that's contributing to the change, right?
Yeah.
I also believe like it's our generation that have like the biggest responsibility, because we didn't grow up with the social media brainwashing that a lot of younger generations are like so stuck in. There's so much stuff on social media that people take it for like the reality, and like if you believe everything that you're looking at social media, like it doesn't surprise me that there's such conflicting views on certain things.
I think that it's interesting as well. Our generation, the media landscape and the way in which we consume information changed dramatically during our like formative years. So the internet went mainstream, and then you kind of went through like you'd have a couple of news bulletins a day and like a newspaper. That would be how you found stuff out. CFAX, teletext, and now we went into 24-hour rolling news. We went into social media, so we're like a bridging generation, I think, of like that change. And there's I don't know, there's a responsibility that goes with that to be as aware as possible, I think, about the impacts of it, and to recognize that the people who are in power are, for the most part, certainly in the really senior positions, the big like FTSE 100 CEOs and maybe less so now. I think a lot of senior politicians are the same age as us, but like a bit older. So they maybe came before, and then there are lots of people coming after, and we're in this sort of bridging generation in the middle. And so I do think there's a really significant role to be played still for the people who are in their 30s and 40s, where you kind of can see and feel the change, and you were generally pushing in the direction of like positive change and kind of like more inclusive, equitable thing. But then every so often there'll be things that catch you, things that are like, you've got your own like embedded like prejudices that you need to like question, and you've got things that are the younger generation will be challenging you on, and you got to recognize that you were doing that. You were doing that like 15, 20 years ago, and
I think as long as the dialogues are open and respectful, it's okay if like for people to say the wrong thing or to be a bit unaware of what they're saying and the connotations to it. It's just as a person, if you're correcting the other, just do it respectfully, so that you don't put them off ever talking about those subjects.
My favourite example of that is, and this is a football example, there's a footballer, former goalkeeper, he must be late 50s now, guy called Neville Southall, and he had, this was back before Twitter became a complete cesspit, he had his Twitter account, he tweeted something, really offended, I think, both the trans community and the sex worker community, and
in one swoop.
I don't know whether it was one swoop or whether he was on a bit of a spree, I'm not sure. But what was really interesting was that he then admitted, I don't know what I'm talking about. He basically went, I've got no experience of this. He was trying to be funny or make a joke or something, and he then basically said, educate me. And so he was really open.
Good
and this is a guy who, like, you wouldn't assume it of him. But he was like, I'm going to be open to this. I'm going to, like, I want to learn. I want to understand. Tell me about your lives. Tell me about the issues and the challenges you're facing and all the rest of it. He then started handing over. Started doing like social media takeovers where someone would take his account, and he had loads of followers as a sort of like prominent kind of ex-footballer. People doing takeovers of his account and like spending a week like talking about what was going on in their lives, doing
nice.
like answering questions and things. And
like
I thought
first-hand account of what he needs to know.
Exactly. And he then was like, from having like put both feet firmly in the muck to then be like, you know what, I got that wrong, and I'm gonna then use my platform to help things get better.
Yeah.
And that's probably where I'm like a good point to end on, is that I try to be, and I like would urge particularly white cis heterosexual men like me to recognize the like privilege and the space that you've got, and use that to create space for others to be able to grow and develop and be more included, and to have the space they need to live their lives, because actually you just naturally inhabit more of society, and you have so much more safety to say things and do things and live your life.
We could do a whole episode just on privilege, right?
And we could absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think recognizing that you have that, even where you might feel hard done by, recognizing that actually you are coming already from a place of privilege, and actually then use that for good, and use that to give people as much space as others.
Thank you so much for coming in today. On an ending note, I would love to have you back to talk with this other guy who has some like opposing views on privilege.
Yeah.
And exactly what you just said, but he has very different views on that, and I'd love to like have the three of us discuss that.
Yeah.
But for today, thank you, Arlen, mate. That was great. I appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed it.
Nice one.
Yeah, real pressure in the media tonight. Yeah, but the music got me feeling just fine. Yeah, I know we be quarantined tonight. Yeah, but the music got me feeling just fine. Yeah, real pressure in the media tonight. Yeah, but the music got me feeling just fine. Yeah, real pressure in the media tonight. Yeah, but the music got me